Wars of the Roses was a series of battles that lasted from 1455 to 1485, fought between the House of Lancaster and the House of York for the English throne.
The name Wars of the Roses were named after the badges used by the two sides, the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York.
Both families were descendants from Edward III, King of England. The first Lancastrian king was Henry VI. His son, Henry V, won major victories in the 100 Years' War against France. Henry VI lost most of the French land his father had conquered. In 1453, Henry VI went insane.
Richard, Duke of York, was appointed protector of the realm in 1454.
When Henry VI recovered in late 1454, he dismissed Richard.
Richard raised an army of 3,000 men who marched to London. On May 22, 1455, Richard attacked Henry VI. In less than an hour, the Yorkists won and captured Henry VI. After the battle, Richard was again made English protector.
In December of 1460, the Lancastrians gathered forces in northern England and killed Richard, Duke of York, outside his castle.
Richard's son, Edward, was proclaimed King Edward IV. In March 1461, Edward IV won against the Lancastrians at the Battle of Towton.
Henry, his wife, and their son fled to Scotland.
The next year, Edward IV killed Henry VI and his son at the Battle of Tewkesbury. Edward IV then ruled uninterrupted for 21 years, until his death in 1483. His oldest son was proclaimed Edward V. Edward IV's brother, Richard III, seized the crown and imprisoned Edward V and his younger brother in the Tower of London, where they disappeared, probably murdered.
Henry Tudor then wanted the throne. On August 22, 1485, Henry Tudor and his supporters fought Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, where Richard III was defeated and killed. Henry Tudor was crowned Henry VII, the first Tudor king. He married Elizabeth of York, Edward IV's daughter, in 1486. This united the Yorkist and Lancastrian clan.
Henry VII, or Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond, was born in Pembrokeshire, Wales, on January 28, 1457. He was the son of Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond, and Margaret Plantagenet, but his father died about 3 months before he was born. His mother was only 14 years old when he was born. Henry was brought up by his uncle Jasper Tudor, Earl of Pembroke. He had promised to marry Elizabeth of York, the eldest daughter of Edward IV. He then married her on January 18, 1456.
The Battle of Bosworth was a real turning point for Henry Tudor. This is where he'd become Henry VII. On August 22, 1485, Henry took 2,000 men from Milford Haven in Wales to the field in Bosworth. Henry wanted to launch his campaign against Henry III. Charles VIII from France gave him the money to launch it. Henry won in Bosworth and was invading Richard III. When Richard III found out about Henry invading, he wasn't worried. Richard thought that all the major landowners in Wales would take him out, but that is not what happened. Henry Tudor took them out and was then known as Henry VII.
Henry VII rebuilt the royal finances by doing the following: promoting trade, enforcing taxes, and avoiding war. After this, he made a great fortune, which he gave to his son and following heir, Henry VIII. He died of tuberculosis on April 21st, 1509, and he is now buried at Westminster Abbey. His son is now VIII. From everybody here, this is Good Morning Tudor, England.
Henry VIII was born on June 28th of 1491. His dad was Henry VII, who was king at the time. He was Henry VII's second son. His first was Arthur. Henry was into music and arts. He wrote the song "Past Time with Good Company," which was popular during the European Renaissance. Henry became king at age 17 and ruled for 36 years. He earned the title Defender of the Faith.
Henry VIII had 6 wives.
Through them he had 3 children, a son and 2 daughters. His wives were Catherine of Aragon, who was the first, who he was married to from 1509 to 1533, so 24 years. The second was Anne Boleyn from 1533 to 1536, 3 years. The third was Anne Seymour from 1536 to 1537, so 1 year. And his fourth, Anne of Cleves, was from somewhere in 1540 to somewhere in 1540, so not even a year. His fifth was Catherine Howard from 1540 to 1542, 2 years. And his last was Catherine Parr from 1543 to 1547, so 4 years. So the longest marriage he had was 24 years. He also had some of his wives beheaded for idolatry and treason.
Horrible histories in full HD for these lyrics. Divorced, beheaded, and died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I'm Henry VIII, and I had 6 sorry wives, and you could say that I ruined their lives. Catherine of Aragon, she was wife number 1, but then she failed to give me a son. So then I had to ask her for a divorce, which broke her poor heart, of course. Young Anne Boleyn, she was wife number 2, and she raised the daughter she best she could do, but then she flirted with some other man, so off with the chop went dear old Anne. The lovely Jane Seymour, she was wife number 3, and she was the love of a lifetime for me. And then she gave me a son, his name's Little Prince Ed, but then poor old Jane went and dropped dead. Divorced, beheaded, and died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I'm Henry VIII, and I had 6 sorry wives. You can say that, I ruined their lives. Anne of Cleves came as wife number 4, and that's when I fell for the portrait I saw. Laid on her face and cried, she's a horse, I must have another divorce. Catherine Howard, she was wife number 5, she was a child of 19, so alive. She flirted with others, and that's no way to behave. An accent young Catherine straight to her grave. Catherine Parr, she was the last, but by then, all my best days had passed. Lucky young Catherine was lucky to stay alive as I laid on my deathbed at age 55. It's kind of unfair. Divorced, beheaded, and died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I'm Henry VIII, and I had 6 sorry wives. You could say that, I ruined their lives.
When the Pope would not grant one of Henry VIII's divorces, he broke the ties with England and the Roman Church, and made his own church, which he became the head of. Then Henry VIII died on January 22nd, 1547, just 5 months before his 56th birthday.
Edward VI and his family. Edward was the only legitimate son of King Henry VIII. He was sick for most of his childhood, but most historians say he was tall and healthy. Jane Seymour gave birth to Edward. He was the only male tutor of his time. Edward's education was in philosophy, geometry, music, scripture, French, Spanish, Italian, and most of his teachers were female. Edward's security. His security was very strict. No one less than a knight could see him. Edward's role as king. He was 10 when he became king, but since he was too young to take on the responsibilities of being king, his uncle Edward Seymour took the responsibilities for him. Edward Seymour, Edward Tudor's uncle. Edward Seymour was born in 1506. Edward, known as the Lord of Protector, from 1547 to 1549. Edward Seymour was removed from the power by the Privy Council. The Privy Council was led by John Dudley. Edward was executed in 1552. Edward Tudor's death. He became ill in early 1553, and he died on June 6, 1553.
On February 18, 1516, in Greenwich Palace, Bloody Mary was born. Her father was Henry VIII, and her mother was Catherine of Aragon. Mary could not see her mother because her father hated her because she could not have a son.
Who does that to the child? like she's connected to her mom. So who does that? Her father's got problems.
Some people are messed up. She was the only child of King Henry VIII, and she had a half-sister Elizabeth and a half-brother. Her dad wanted a son, so he divorced his wife and got remarried to Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth was Anne Boleyn's kid. The king's favorite daughter was Elizabeth, so Mary got very jealous.
But yet she secretly admired her. That's a plus.
She was 6 when she got engaged to Charles V, the King of Spain, but he broke it off not long after.
Rude.
Philip II of Spain, which was the son of Charles V, was married to Mary. But he wasn't in love with her, so he left for the Netherlands, and the only reason he came back was to persuade her to ally England with Spain.
Rude.
Their kids were Francis Grey, Henry Brandon, Eleanor Brandon, and Lord Henry Brandon. On October 1st, 1553, she became the first queen regnant of England. She ruled for 5 years, and she burned nearly 300 English Protestants at the stake for heresy, which earned her the nickname Bloody Mary.
Maybe they were evil or something. They did something wrong. It's got a good reason to do that.
300 people?
Yeah.
No.
When Mary died November 17, 1558, at the city of Westminster United, at age 42, afterwards Elizabeth took over. She died from ovarian cysts, uterine cancer, and maybe even influenza. But she dealt with depression as well.
R.I.P. Mary. Love you, girl.
Elizabeth I was born on September 7, 1533 in Greenwich, London. When she was 2 years old, her father, Henry VIII, beheaded her mother, Anne Boleyn. She was the second daughter of Henry VIII. She had a half-sister named Mary Tudor, or also known as Bloody Mary. She had a brother named Edward VI. She was skilled in fashion and acting. Since she liked acting, she really liked William Shakespeare, but she was never married.
Her friends gave her the nickname Good Queen Bess because she was a really good queen. Later on in her life, her military defeated the Spanish Armada. This gave England a lot more freedom from Spain. She also had a pirate that worked for her named Sir Francis Drake. She would send him out to raid the Spanish ships in the area, and then he'd bring back all the gold and loot back to Elizabeth. After a long 45 years of being queen, Elizabeth died on March 24th, 1631.
Her favorite line was, "A clear, innocent conscience fears nothing."